All right, you are going to play Quarkle. If you have 2 players, split the deck up into 36 cards for each player, like this. If you have 3 players, split your deck up into 24 cards for each player, this. And if you have 4 players, split the deck up into 18 cards for each player. Once the cards are split up according to the number of players that you have, you should set up the table like this. Each player takes the top 3 cards from their pile and puts them face up in a row directly in front of them. These are the cards that that player can use to make particles. To begin the game, each player will take the top card from their pile that is face down and put it face up in the middle area. The cards in the middle area can be used by anyone. In the first level of this game, particles can be made by either using 2 cards to form a particle called a meson, or using 3 cards to form a particle called a baryon. The only rule about forming particles for now is that the charge in the upper corner of your particle has to add up to an integer value. For instance, 2/3 plus 2/3 minus 1/3 is a total of 3/3, which is 1 elementary charge. This value being an integer means this makes a particle. You've made your first baryon. When you make a particle, you need to be sure to replace the cards, first in the middle and then on your row, for all of the players to continue to use the cards in the middle, and for you to be ready to form another particle on your side. This time, perhaps I'd like to make a meson with 2 cards, totaling -1, which is an integer. And replace the middle card first, and then my row. You will not be taking turns in this game, so make particles as fast as you can and get as many quarks over in your corner of particles that you've made. At the end of the round, count up the number of quarks that you've used throughout the round, and that's your score for the first round. Pause the video now and play your first round. All right, I hope you had fun playing that first round. Now, you're going to play a few more rounds, and while you do this, keep track of your points and try to challenge each other to go faster and faster in building particles. As you're doing this, begin to think about a hypothesis that you could make about the Quarkle cards and how they form particles, beyond just having the charges add up to an integer value. Pause the video now to play more rounds of Quarkle. Whoa, all right, welcome back. Now, after playing a few rounds of this game, I hope you've started to think about a hypothesis of how these cards can be put together. Stop the video now, and each person in your lab group should come up with a hypothesis that's testable using the cards. All right, you've probably noticed by now some interesting things about these cards. The first is that any 3 matter cards will actually form a baryon, and any 3 antimatter cards will form an antibaryon. You can also show that any 2 cards, as long as they're different colors, one being matter and one being antimatter, will also form a meson. Play the game again using this knowledge that you've just figured out. All right, welcome back. You may think that you've already mastered this game because you're playing it so fast, but there's something that we haven't considered yet. In the top corner of the card, just below the charge, is a colored box called the color charge of that quark. This down quark has a color of green associated with it. That's important for our final level of the game. In the final level of the game, every particle that you make must have a neutral color overall. So if you look at my examples here, I have 3 quarks making a baryon, where each of the colors in the corner are different. This makes the color charge neutral, and therefore that baryon can be formed. My antibaryon works the same way. These 3 cards have different colors, therefore neutral is the overall color charge, and it can be formed. And each of my mesons are also behaving the same way. But with mesons, you have to have opposite colors. So you might want to write down opposite of green is pink, opposite of blue is yellow, and the opposite of red is cyan. Now, play the game one more time using this new information and only build particles that have a neutral overall color.